It's great to have you on the show. Yeah, we met on LinkedIn. So let me briefly introduce you to the audience. You are a fractional AI executive with 20 plus years of experience helping enterprises and startups turn AI from buzzword to business value. You have led AI teams at Google and Microsoft and were head of AI at FactSet. It's a NYSE public company FDS, and you have co-founded and sold two startups. You are a Kaggle master and hold MBA from Columbia Business School. Again, welcome.
Thank you so much, Chef. I appreciate that.
Okay, without further ado, let's get into the questions. I know we're going to talk about enterprise project you have done, right? So please do describe the general situation so the audience kind of know what we're talking about here.
Sure. So this is a project that I did with an enterprise customer, a fairly large software company. And this software company had a problem. The problem was that its tech support was very, very expensive. And something like 50 or 60% of incoming calls were from people that wanted to get support with a formula language or an API that this company had created. The API had been very successful. It was introduced decades earlier, maybe 20 or 30 years earlier. It became very, very popular globally. And it grew organically to the point where there was something like 500,000 different method calls available. And so it was very popular, but nobody had any appetite to memorize that level of information. And so they would basically call this company. The API was very powerful. And the company's selling proposition was call us and we'll answer on the first ring and we'll pair you up with a human. And it's not just going to be any human. It's going to be a human that really knows these 500,000 calls and they'll just help you. And so that made up for a lot of gaps in documentation and code quality and encapsulation and all the good stuff that we know, like how to organize software. They kind of didn't have to do it because it's not a problem for a customer because they could just call and almost immediately get the help they needed. So this was good for customers, not so good for this client because it is very expensive to train somebody to that level of knowledge and then make them available on the first ring. You need a lot of those people.
Let's talk about the business outcome that were mandated by your client. Do they want to reduce number of staff? Do they want to go even faster? Do they want to resolve the ticket on the first try? Whatever. So yeah, what is the business outcome that they were looking for?
It would be delightful if the client was very clear about the kind of bullseye business outcome that they wanted. However, that was not the case. The client had a general desire to sprinkle some AI magic over this process. They felt that it was expensive, it was painful, it was manual, and it was frequent. And based on those characteristics, they said, hey, take a look at this. What can we do with AI? So it was really like, it was a bit of a solution searching for a problem, but I mean, the problem was there, but they didn't really, there was not a number, there was not a deadline, there was not a very exact goal.
Okay, well, that's interesting. Wow, I know that can happen sometimes, but
Yeah.
that's very interesting. So what did you do?
Well, so the first thing that we did was we said, great, why don't we just have AI answer the calls? Or better yet, people can just get the information through an AI agent on the website. And that went nowhere. The reason that went nowhere is there is, again, these people that are answering the phone at the moment or when we started were highly trained. They had camaraderie, they had esprit de corps, and they felt themselves like sort of the, I don't know, how would you put it? The priests that are guarding the purity of the temple. Okay,
Sure.
you've met
Yes.
people like this.
Yes.
And they absolutely rejected, like, there's no way that AI can do what I can do. AI is going to make mistakes. And if you expose AI to our customers and it makes the mistakes, we're just going to lose business. We're going to lose it by the millions. No. So that was like, no. So then we said, okay, that's fine. We won't expose AI to the customers. But what we could do is when you, the human, are picking up the call, why don't we just give you a little AI assistant? The AI assistant will listen to the same question from the human. We will translate it. And by the way, it's in chat. The humans call in, it's by chat. So we'll basically like read the chat and we'll create an answer and you can either use that answer or you can write your own. If you disagree with the answer, You could just ignore it. You could write your own. If you're being very nice, you can also tell us like why it's wrong, and the answer will get better. And this is just a time savings for you. You could like get home to your kids faster. They said okay. And so we started this out. It was, we started this out in about 3 months. We reached something like, we started with 0% accuracy. We reached 70% accuracy in about 3 months. So we're very, very excited that like it was going up and to the right, up and to the right. And then we hit this plateau right around 70. So it was like, it was like 30, 50, 55, 65, 70, 71, 69, 72, 70, like that kind of plateau. It was very weird. It was, you know, we were on this curve and then the curve flattened out. We started to look into this data, and we realized something really interesting, which is that for a good chunk of the answers, we were getting different answers for the same question from different experts. For example, you know, one expert would say that when a customer would ask, you know, what's the right function call for this thing that I'm trying to do? One expert would say it's function call A, and the other expert would say it's function call B. We had a feedback loop such that when we get feedback from the expert, it would get back into the model. So the model gets smarter over time. That's how we were able to climb to 70%. However, it turned out that this bit kept getting flipped from 0 to 1, like from function A to function B. And this was true for a lot of the remaining answers. So like most of the feedback that we were getting at that point conflicted with other experts. And then we reached out to these experts and I said, like, did you know that this other expert thinks that it's function A? And they were like, who's this other expert? They didn't even know the name. So these people had never met. They didn't know that they disagreed. And this was kind of eye-opening for me, because even though the team was highly trained, they were not geographically in one place. They were distributed around the world. And people in the office talked about things, but they didn't exactly like align on specific calls. Like that's kind of above and beyond the call of duty. So they were all sure that they were right. They were not aware that there was a dissenting opinion. And we kind of saw this as an opportunity. And the opportunity was, we basically brought these experts together. Hey, look, Bill meet Bob, Bob meet Bill. You guys have different views. Let's hash this out. Is it Formula One or Formula Two? And Bob and Bill like went into like a super deep discussion, including their domain expertise, which is not important for this call. But it was a non-trivial discussion. It took them a while to reach agreement, but eventually they reached an agreement. And then they were both very, very happy because they agreed on what it was and they respected each other, etc. And our idea was like, let's do this at scale. So we created a committee. The committee was essentially, you can self-identify if you want to, if you care, if you really are the priest that's maintaining the purity of the temple, raise your hand, join the committee, and then you could really do it, not just for you, but for the whole company. So we got a couple of volunteers. The committee would basically look at only those cases where there were dissenting opinions. And we used AI tools to identify what the thresholds for what a dissenting opinion was. And then the committee would make sort of a determination, like it's method call A or it's method call B. Once the committee did that, something really interesting happened, Jeff, which is now we had a new source of truth, which was the committee. And that source of truth was actually more trusted than an individual. So before, when the model would say something, the individual expert that the model is serving had the final word that says it's correct or it's incorrect. They accept it or they reject it. If they reject it, they tell us why. But after the committee's in place, it's no longer up to that individual, because if the committee says that it's function call A and the individual is sure that it's function call B, they still cannot call the AI wrong. They have to take it up with the committee. It becomes a point of dissension with the committee. So it changed the center of gravity and the source of truth. That was very good for this client because it surfaced disagreements that were invisible, and it allowed knowledge to scale company-wide rather than be built up in silos in the brains of individual reps. It was also a little bit humbling for some of the reps, which, Jeff, I won't lie to you, was very satisfying for me. But nonetheless, the impact was that, maybe impact is the next question, but it really, separately from the cost savings, this kind of change to the process was, for me, the most interesting part of this project.
You talk about part of the impact already, which is kind of the process change, right? Instead of relying on humans, there's a committee there, right? So the center of gravity shifted. But please, yeah, continue to talk about other impact that you see.
Yeah, so we sort of created a seed. Okay, let me start. I'll start with the most direct impact, and then I'll go a little bit philosophical with your permission, Jeff.
Yes, sure.
The most direct impact is that our accuracy went from the 70% plateau where we spent like a good 2 months figuring this out until after the committee got started, we went from 70 to 80 to 90 to 95 to 98. There's still like a little bit of, nothing's perfect. AI is definitely not perfect. But we were able to climb like pretty much as far as you could go with AI. And because the accuracy went up to 80, to 90, 95, 98%, we won the right to eventually expose AI to the users. In fact, we were able to do an analysis that says, okay, when in cases where a human disagrees with AI, who's right? And we were able to answer that by surfacing it to the committee. When the committee sees it, they don't see human versus AI. They see opinion A and opinion B because we don't want to engage any biases. And then we were basically able to get the committee to break ties, and we crossed the threshold where most of the time the AI is right when there's a disagreement. So once we crossed that threshold, it became very difficult for the priesthood to sort of keep AI away from customers because it turned out that when there is a disagreement, most of the time AI became correct. This was not the case in the beginning. In the beginning, AI was mostly incorrect. So we had a lot of work to do to get to that stage, and it's not automatic. But once we crossed that threshold, the price per call, the price to service a call dropped by a lot. It dropped by over 90%. And this engagement was a couple of years ago. Since then, they've now been able to expose this AI to customers using MCP, which basically makes the whole thing self-service. So not only is the call cheaper, but there is no call anymore because you could work from the host application where this API exists, and you could just ask for what you need, and the AI gives you the right thing, and it's all integrated and it's beautiful. There is no more human in the loop. Customers are much happier. So like there's many sort of knock-on effects. Beyond that, we also sort of established a pattern that this company was able to follow for other use cases. And the pattern is, how do you scale up the work of highly skilled people in a very niche domain that are doing repetitive things? What is the change management? How do you get to the right level of quality? What are the thresholds that unlock the next degree of trust? And that was useful to accelerate many other use cases at this company. Together, if I had to boil it down to numbers, we spent something like $70,000 to $80,000 on this use case. It was like not very expensive. It was a relatively junior developer with a bit of coaching, and and the rest of it was kind of expert. It was organizational doctoring, but it wasn't really billable work for this project, right? So about $70,000 or $80,000 of sort of direct costs, and the impact on this use case alone, excluding the knock-on effect and the acceleration for other use cases, was on the order of $10 to $15 million within 2 years. So very nice ROI for the company and kind of learning a new way of working, which was invaluable for them.
Wow, that's a really good story. I mean, I think a lot of times, lately I've been thinking about this. If you have read the book Crossing the Chasm, right? That's for
Sure.
innovation. So this is for like AI adoption, right? Like how do you really, especially at the enterprise level, move from pilot to the enterprise adoption? So I think the case study you talked about really offers a fascinating insight to that. So that is great. Last question. I know you're working on some other stuff, and what else are you doing in AI that you would like the audience to know?
Well, thanks for that. Thanks for that question. I work as a fractional CTO. I have a practice where I help startups build an MVP or get unstuck. Sometimes I help them raise money. I also have a couple of enterprise clients, and I help them with enterprise things. Every client is different. One of my clients is asking for help to migrate their engineering team from an old way of working to a new AI first development process. Another client is asking me to help them incorporate AI into the product. And so they're thinking about what is the right level of abstraction so that the product is capable of doing many different things. When should we use deterministic code? When should we use the power of LLMs? And also you get the perils of LLMs. So it's thinking through those trade-offs. Again, I don't have a product, I have a service, but I have to say, Jeff, it's a super exciting year for me. There's so many new things happening, and I'm having a ball.
That's great. That's great to hear. Again, it's great to have you on the show. I'm sure people will have a lot of fun learning what you have done.
Thank you so much, Jeff.